Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Cat's Track. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and sharing this with your friends. Today's episode, again, is with our friend who we've had almost a year ago now, with Dr. Corey Deacon, the co-founder of Nirvana Health, who now we're all celebrating with a new office in the Hopewell building in the Mission area in Calgary. So congratulations, Corey, and I'm really glad that you're here today. I'd love to learn a little bit more about how you're finding the new space as a start, and then maybe we could touch on your passion around mental health and the situation around the decisions around the lockdown, et cetera. Is that okay with you?
Sounds great.
Excellent. Well, tell us about the new space. What is that? What's happening over there?
Yeah, so we've been in a bit of a space deficiency for the last year. And yeah, we finally got our location built out. So we were able to triple our neuro rehab department. We were able to bring on an integrative oncologist, a regenerative sports medicine, naturopathic doctor, and a chronic care endocrine doctor as well. We have a medical doctor joining us in about a month. So yeah, it's just phenomenal. We're able to really expand our project and how many people we can help. So
I'm proud of you.
It's been a little bit like living in a dream.
Yeah, I'm really proud of you. And what a great space. It's so easy access with underground parking, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, tons of bright lights.
Yeah.
Right across from the karaoke bar.
Well, and bright light, very, very important to talk about, right? With that morning light that you tell, I think all of your clients probably that we all need that morning light. Can you just delve into that just a little bit before we carry on?
Sure. Light exposure in the morning plays a huge role in regulating an area in the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Now, the SCN, as we abbreviate it, is a structure that tells our brain when to do everything. So when to eat, when to reproduce, when to rest, when to sleep, when to activate, when to energize, when to work, when to get stressed. There's healthy levels of stress. When to downregulate stress, when to inflame. So our immune system actually inflames a little bit more at night, and then we go into anti-inflammation during the day. All of these factors are programmed initially by light. It's the causative factor for our systems to program properly. And when we don't do that, basically we get what's called a circadian delay, and our circadian rhythm pushes. So we start not sleeping well. Number one problem in mental health problems is poor sleep. And that becomes a vicious cycle. So there's so many different effects. And I find that if the suprachiasmatic nucleus is not being stimulated properly, pharmaceutical medications, exercise, diet just will fail most of the time. So it needs to be, I think it needs to be a foundational protocol. It needs to be talked about more. It's more than just getting fresh air. It plays a role in regulating dopamine, serotonin, melatonin, our ability to shift in and out of different networks within the brain, which is really important. And we'll talk more about that with the mental health pandemic that's triggered, which isn't being talked about much. We know that there's this global COVID pandemic, and right behind it is the mental health pandemic, which has affected far more people. So the ability to shift in and out of different brain networks is essential. If you get stuck in certain networks, that is the recipe for the starting of mental health related symptoms. So that morning sun exposure, I tell, even if you have trouble getting up in the morning, drag yourself out. Even if you open your window so that you have the sun coming through the screen and you sit inside your bedroom, that's great. You want to be doing that. You can't get the same effect through a window. It'll take 50 to 100 times longer to set the circadian rhythm, which frankly, we don't have enough time in the day. So yeah, doing that is very essential. So yeah, definitely a foundational protocol here at Nirvana.
Amazing. And that, here it is. It's available to all of us. And it only takes a few minutes a day and doesn't cost anything except some wonderful time that you can meditate or whatever.
That's right. Yeah.
It's awesome, Corey. Good advice. Thank you. May we go into then the decision around the lockdown and obviously the reaction to the reason why, and of course it was the amount of people that were all going to die from COVID. Can we switch that gear and talk about how that decision has affected people around the earth with mental health?
What we've seen in firsthand experience, and I'll need to make things clear too, that we don't see a lot of people in acute psychiatric situations. So we're not seeing the suicides, we're not seeing the suicidal attempts, we're not seeing the psychiatric intake. So I can't speak much on that. There's not a whole lot of available statistics on the suicides. However, I do have colleagues within the ICU and emergency units that have said, without a doubt, suicides are sky high. Drug overdoses as well, which we group into, of course, mental health concerns. So what I have been seeing is regular people that have always typically been able to regulate very well, high performing people, professionals, never really had a problem with any mental health issues, maybe slight anxiousness, maybe stress, a little bit of burnout, but all of a sudden hitting this where we're being thrown this cultural trauma that is putting a ton of weight on people that already had a lot of different stressors in their system. And it's the straw that's breaking the camel's back for a lot of people. And you don't see events like this happen a lot collectively. So usually when we see people, we do see there's a straw that breaks the camel's back, but it's not this widespread, everybody experiencing the same straw, so to speak. So since April, when the shutdowns happened, our amount, the intake of new clients that came in almost doubled. We've now to the point where we tripled. I had 45 new patients last month alone. And I have 2-hour intake appointments with people. So that's 90 hours of just new patients coming through. So, a lot of people look at that like, oh, your, business is so successful. But, I look at it as something is wrong, gravely, for this many people to be having mental health concerns all of a sudden. A lot of them are medication resistant because in a trauma, while a trauma is happening, medications are all very, very limited to what they can actually do. And we know this from a lot of the psychiatric literature. So you're having this unknown. It's almost in a form of cultural gaslighting of, our experience being denied, ignored, invalidated, and it's just this sole focus on COVID. And a lot of people are getting left behind and not being attended to. As well, you're seeing a lot of people that have a lot of victimization states over their life that are just, again, completely overwhelmed, in a very difficult place, very difficult to work with, again, because it's like this ongoing trauma. We still don't know what's going to be happening. And it's been very, very difficult for people. And I've felt the brunt of it too. And it's interesting because a lot of the talk is economical. Well, people are stressed because they might be losing their business, but I know a lot of people that their businesses are doing well, but they still are struggling because they're lacking social connection. And again, there's this unknown. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So I do see the need for some of the protocols, especially with speaking with a colleague recently, actually in the ICU, saying that COVID is causing people to code out for sometimes 4 to 6 weeks. So the turnaround out of the hospital is slow, which is not typical of things like influenza. There are a lot of really good therapies, though, that have been developed by Sorrento Pharmaceuticals, Relief Therapeutics, Cytodyne, that are really moving the needle on recovery rate out of ICU, as well as time to recover being significantly reduced. However, unfortunately, most people don't know this, but the FDA declined their use for emergency or status for emergency use and approved the vaccines instead. So, there's some of these tools that are out there that we're not using to clear these ICU units efficiently, which is what's keeping us gummed up in this mess. So I think there needs to be a very different approach that needs to be hastily implemented, because we're not seeing things get better on the mental health side of things, and actually more and more people getting affected the longer we stay in this. So it's a very hard decision, but something needs to be done, because the majority of the populace is being affected, and frankly emotionally decimated, to save, of course, COVID being a very dangerous virus for a small percent of the population. But we have to look at other ways, because I don't see our culture surviving very well if this continues.
Corey, it's such a concern for me and a group of friends that feel the same way. And I know you and I have become friends over the year, and I feel very fortunate for that. What I'm curious about and frustrated by is Dr. Brad Thompson, who's an infectious disease specialist, his colleagues, and I assume you have never even been consulted with any of these decisions that need to be made. Do you have an update for us? Have you been consulted since?
I haven't. I've been consulted by various movements that are looking to try to change the lockdown restrictions, and get us. I think at this point, getting back to normal isn't a reality. It's just not going to be, which I don't think is bad in every aspect. I think there's a lot of good things that are going to come out of this.
Agreed.
But no, I have not been consulted by any government agencies. I think a lot of people haven't, and it's the trouble, and we may need to look at this as a political downfall. Looking at a lot of decisions that have been made have been myopic, they've been knee jerk, and there just hasn't been a kind of back to the drawing board type approach, which at Nirvana, that is our big thing when we work with people is back to the drawing board. Okay, this isn't working, let's go back to the drawing board. You can't keep trying to solve the same problem with the same approach. It's literally the definition of insanity. So I think we maybe need to look at the political system as a failing too, where events like this almost need the majority consensus on what we do moving forward. Right. So it's been a very interesting time.
I agree with you, Corey. Thank you. One other thing, and I know we only have a few minutes left, and you're a busy man, and I appreciate your time so far. Can you touch base a little bit on the people like myself that had a traumatic event inside of this time, and it triggered, in my case, the autoimmune situation? Did you see a lot of that over the last year where it was a trigger?
That's always difficult to pinpoint, because we don't have there's not a lot of people that we see and have kind of preliminary data before COVID, and then post-COVID responses. We do have a bit from our current patient population in terms of their brain imaging and that sort of thing. Usually we're on top of things, so if there's an immune situation unfolding, we get on top of it quickly. But we have seen a lot of activation of trauma circuitry, specific regions and networks, including the default mode network, which is our over internalization process. So that's been very interesting. I think I'd have to say about 80 to 85% of people experience showing this activation of the internalization response and getting stuck there, which is a recipe for anxiety, OCD, and depression. So we're definitely seeing that sort of thing without a doubt. Since COVID, that has triggered. Very, very rare percent of the population, but actually a handful of people that have felt better since COVID, which is really interesting. A lot of people with social anxiety disorders and that kind of thing. But for the most part, you've seen a huge triggering. I've seen a lot of autoimmune reactions. I've seen people that have gotten COVID, recovered, but not really fully recovered. cognitively, which is another interesting and more on the biological side of the actual effects of COVID. So yeah, we've seen that, seen a handful of autoimmune reactions triggered. Hard to say for sure that it's because of this, but it's definitely a very likely possibility. So there are a lot of people don't realize that there are physical symptoms, changes, and disorders that can develop when our limbic system, which is the system that is supposed to keep us safe emotionally and psychologically, as well as physically, but when that system overactivates for a long period of time, it actually causes the innate inflammatory system to upregulate. And then this is what makes us feel sick when we get the flu. A lot of people think it's the flu that causes us the symptoms. It's actually not. It's actually our immune reaction to the flu that causes us all the flu-like symptoms. But when that system gets stuck on, which it can, if the limbic system gets stuck overactivating, then you can run risk of developing inflammatory disorders. So basically anything that ends in itis, GI disorders, gastrointestinal disorders, digestive disorders, autoimmune reactions. Autoimmune reactions are a little less common because there's another step that needs to happen in what's called a T helper cell system balance. So you have to kind of have the first innate activation, and then you also have to have this other shift in the immune system. So it's a little less common, but very, very prevalent in the research. So yeah, there's a lot of physical conditions as well that are manifesting because there are a lot of people going into emerge with heart conditions. The probably the saddest feature of the entire process is people aren't going in to get urgent care when they should be. And so, people are going into the emergency where, they could have gotten onto an anticoagulant and maybe had a stent or something installed in the heart. And instead it's a quadruple bypass surgery because they waited and waited and waited until things got really bad. Right. And so this is the kind of thing that we are motivating and rewarding and kind of punishing people that are mucking up the system, which is exactly what it's there for, right? And I know doctors' stress is at an all-time high trying to manage patients and triage them. Yeah, so it's been a difficult time.
Yeah, no doubt, Corey. I'm so grateful. I want to say thank you for your time today, your expertise, your care for me, my family, my community. Shondell and I specifically would love to do a big shout out. You've literally changed our world, and you've reversed my symptoms where I wouldn't have been able to continue with Cat's Tracks with the symptoms I had. So I'm so grateful to you and your guidance. And after 6 months of going through our traditional system, coming to you was the right thing to do.
I'm glad you did.
I am glad too, Corey. Thank you again for your service, and I appreciate your time today.
Yes, thank you so much, Catherine.
Everyone, Dr. Corey Deacon with Nirvana Health, and check out their new space. Make an appointment with these guys. They are amazing. I appreciate your time today. Thank you for joining us on Cat's Track.
Absolutely, anytime.